Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you are now listening to Rob and Rat's World of Wonder podcast. So sit back, relax, and prepare your ears as they take you on a journey of all things weird and wonderful.
Welcome back to another week of podcasts. I am Rat.
And I am Rob, and you're very welcome along to the show. If you're a first-time listener, thanks for listening to us. And if you've come back again, thanks for coming back.
So we're going solid now. We're going for a good few months now.
Is it? Yeah, probably is it.
Months.
Fair play to you for listening in. Fair play if you're keeping with us.
And look, it's...
What are we talking about today, Steve?
Today's episode, we are talking about survival stories and different things that people go through. You know what I mean? Different situations. And
right.
We have Dogulas Robertson later. I have an interview with him, and we'll get into that a bit later.
Okay.
Who him and his family were in a situation where they ended up shipwrecked for 38 days in the South Pacific Ocean. And it's an amazing story. And we'll get into that later.
Good stuff.
But just, I suppose, for our listeners, a quick thing, just to get onto our Instagram and all that stuff on Rob Rat Podcast. You can find us on all platforms.
Rob, R-O-B, Rat, R-A-T, and then podcast.
All one word. Yeah. And just get on there. And look, if you want to message us, let us know what you think of the show. If you have any thoughts.
Yeah, because we've actually got some interesting projects coming up in the future, and we'll be letting you know about it through Instagram as well. And you can get involved with some of them. So
definitely, yeah. And just there's a bit of interaction there.
Check it out, guys. Yeah. Okay, so check it out. So we go into our world famous Rob and Rat's World of Wonder news.
Is it world famous?
It's world famous now. It is. I've just said it.
It's famous
around the world. Here we go. All right, we're going to the news.
Rob and Rat's Weird and Wonderful News.
Right, hello and welcome to the news.
This is the news.
Right.
Okay, so my story this week.
You're starting, right?
I'm starting. I want to start.
I want to go first. Go on.
So, a 74-year-old woman in India has given birth to twin girls after delivering them via cesarean section recently, only in the last month or so. The mother, Mangayama, 74, and her husband, Sturiyama, 82, had wanted children for years and even said their village had stigmatized the couple for being childless over their life. They would call me the childless lady, Mangayama told reporters. Because...
Villagers can be so cruel, can't they?
Yeah, but I know they can. But because Mangayama had gone through the menopause, the babies were conceived through IVF using a donated egg fertilized with Ricardo's sperm before it was implanted in her. The twins were later delivered through cesarean section. Doctors say she's the world's oldest woman, but that is not yet confirmed. Unfortunately, one day after the twins were delivered, the father, Ricardo, suffered a stroke and is currently being treated in a hospital, the BBC reported. But
74, yeah.
Yeah.
But
that's not right.
But it's probably in India again. I don't think in Ireland, if you went into a hospital, 74-year-old woman said, I want you to put a baby in.
But the thing is, right, because whatever they wanted kids, and that's fair enough.
They just wanted to stop being bullied.
When you reach the menopause, the menopause is you're too old. You know what I mean? You can't have kids anyway.
Yeah.
But I
think you've run out of eggs.
But it's not fair anyway.
Yeah.
That's not meant to happen.
But as you're saying, because the husband has just had a stroke and she's 74, so how old is it? Who's going to mind the kids?
Exactly. When they, maybe their parents might help out. No, but
the villagers aren't going to help out because they're just taking the piss out of them for the last 74 years.
That's not fair on the children, I don't think.
It's not, no.
Do you know what I mean?
No, it's unethical.
Think of the children.
Isn't that what it is? It's unethical.
It is unethical.
Yeah.
What's your story, Rob?
All right, well, I've got a bit more seagull news because I've been just looking at seagulls and just they piss me off a bit, right? So a mum has revealed how a flock of seagulls attacked her 2-year-old daughter just 8 days after they killed her dog. So it's another dog being attacked and then a daughter, right? So terrified Emily Vincent said her family were left traumatised after a Yorkshire Terrier named Rue was savaged by a gull in the back garden. The pet suffered a head wound and brain damage after the attack and it's believed to have caused by the birds pecking at it. So he was supposed to there was a nest in the back garden and they were kind of getting defensive of it. So just days later, then the 2-year-old daughter Jessie was also targeted with the same deadly gang of gulls and left with facial injuries. She believes her injuries would have been more serious had she not run out to fight off the bird. The mother kind of rescued her.
God.
So she said she wanted to speak out because she knows what happened to Gizmo.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she'd heard about it. I think this happened a couple of years ago, but she never really brought it out. But she went to the papers with it then because of what happened with Gizmo the Chihuahua. If you're unaware of Gizmo the Chihuahua, it's a story I've spoken about a number of times in the news. He was picked up by a seagull. He's only a miniature Chihuahua in England.
Carried off
and is never seen again. They thought that possibly They did find a leg, but it turned out to belong to a rabbit. And there is a suspect gull in the area that has been going around.
He's been questioned by police.
He is, yeah. They can only keep him for 24 hours.
They're causing havoc.
They
aren't
are,
they?
yeah. I am looking into trying to get into talking to someone about this.
About their behaviour.
Yeah. So I contacted the Royal Society of Birds in the UK to see if I can get a spokesperson to speak to me about the just behaviour, because a lot of these attacks are happening in the UK. So someone there has to answer for it.
Yeah.
You know?
This can't go on.
This can't go on. Yeah. And I'm not going to stand for it. So, so we might do an episode on seagull attacks and see if I can...
victims.
Yeah.
Talk to some...
Talk to the victims,
It'd be great to talk to one whose chihuahua was carried away.
Yeah, well, she is only 4 or 5. Or maybe I can talk to the mother.
Yeah.
I have another story, right? So this one is, I have a link to this story and I'll tell you about it in a minute. So an Australian man made an amazing solo land during his first flying lesson, right? So he was venturing to the skies for his first lesson, but he was forced to make a solo landing after his instructor blacked out mid-flight, right?
Oh my God.
So Max Sylvester's wife and 3 kids watched from the ground as air traffic controller talked him through a safe landing of the Cessna in Perth in the Jandakot airport. The 30-something-year-old issued a panic mayday call from an altitude of 6,200 feet after his instructor slumped onto his shoulder and could not be woken.
But what happened to the instructor? Did they have a heart attack or something?
Let me get to this now, right? Do you know how to operate the airplane? The air traffic controller in Perth asked urgently, according to the recording of the exchange. And Mr. Sylvester responded, "This is my first lesson." Added that he'd never landed an aircraft before. Realising the enormity of the task at hand, the tower responded, "The first thing we're going to do is make sure that the wings stay level." So he's instructed to maintain altitude and to make a pass above the runway to get a sense of the area and to have more at ease. So 20 minutes later, anyway, he made a bumpy but successful landing. He landed the plane. The instructor was taken to hospital in a stable condition, and he's all right now. I don't know whatever happened to him. He blacked out. But Sylvester received his first solo flight certificate from the Air Australia International.
Jeez, fair play to him though. Like, that's amazing that he did that in one. But imagine how frightening. Imagine you're just there going, "Am I doing it all right?" And your man is...
I've done that. In that airport. When I lived in Australia, I lived in Perth, and you could go online.
Did you live in Australia?
Yeah, but right, you could go online, you could book like an experience. So I went to Jandakot Airport. You go out there.
You can book an experience.
Yeah, so there's loads of things you can do. You can go whatever. See, this is to help fly a plane, right? So I go out there, you meet the guy, and he walks.
You did this, yeah?
Yeah, he brings you around, shows you the things on the outside, and you get.
It could have been the same pilot.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah, right. You sit in, you put on your headphones, and then he lines it up, shows you what the things do. You get on the runway. You put it going forward, you pull back on the handles, you get it to go up into the sky, right? And then he takes over and he kind of levels the plane out, and then he gives it to me again to fly out around the bay. But they land the plane, because the hardest part of flying a plane is landing it, because you just could nosedive into the concrete.
God, yeah.
But so this man, he just managed to talk him into doing it, he landed the plane. But it could have gone like...
Oh, it could have gone off.
Tits up.
But I'd say his like serious adrenaline and you know what I mean?
And his wife and kids are down. His wife and kids, well, flight, yeah, but his wife and kids are down. Watching, waiting for him to come down, yeah. Imagine the fear of that.
Well, I think, like, you know, like, I don't know, like, even I suppose if he kind of gets it a bit right, say if he did make a bit of an I don't know where I'm going with that. He could have. I was thinking, even if the wings weren't leveler, he could have had a crash landed that worked out all right as well. But I suppose the possibilities are probably... He must have been terrified.
Yeah, absolutely.
But fair play to him.
Yeah, he did.
I'd say he listened as intently as possible to those.
Absolutely, yeah. But we're hoping that your man is going to wake up beside him. So he's got this. You don't know what. He's got this pilot asleep beside him.
I can't imagine they let him fly anymore. I mean, give any more lessons to that pilot.
No, I don't know. I wouldn't like to get in the. Unless they were cheaper.
Yeah, that is mad.
I could do them, but there's a risk I'm going to fall asleep. Sure, look.
But you can get them at a discount.
Yeah.
Shall I go with my next story?
Go for it.
Okay, so Joanna Sandstorm of Sweden recently went to a tattoo parlour to have the names of her 2 kids put on her arm. She detailed to the artist the style of writing she wanted and how she wanted the words Nova and Kevin inked on her arm, and the tattoo artist agreed to the work. However, he wound up writing Kelvin instead of Kevin.
Oh, no.
Joanna returned to the tattoo parlour and the artist laughed. He explained to her how he showed her the design ahead of time. She reviewed it and agreed to it. But he still refunded her the money and gave her the number of a tattoo removal clinic. But after she learned that the removal takes multiple treatments and time, she and her husband instead chose to do something else.
Could I guess?
Yeah.
Did they change the child's name to Kelvin?
They changed their son's name. So the name Kelvin,
oh my God.
The name Kelvin has grown on Joanna and her husband. And this way her son's name would match the tattoo.
Oh my God.
She explained, She said, I never heard the name Kelvin before. They realised that no one else has the name and it was quite unique. So now they think it's better than Kevin. So since the boy was only 2, he didn't seem to notice the change. Isn't that pretty? That happened in Sweden.
Jesus Christ. Wow.
Jesus,
yeah.
Jesus, God, yeah.
So what are you named after? I'm named after my mother's tattoo.
It's an interesting story.
It is, yeah. A dad, on his way to Spain with his family, was there on the plane, and then it turned out that the pilot... Do you know the story?
I've heard it, yeah.
So
it's interesting.
well, he's there anyway, and they couldn't take off because one of the pilots hadn't shown up.
He passed out again.
But it turns out that the father was an EasyJet. He was flying an EasyJet, and he is also an EasyJet pilot, and happened to have his license and all his stuff with him. So he got up and flew the plane to Spain.
That's brilliant,
isn't it? Yeah. I don't know, did he wear? Was he in like his holiday gear, like Hawaiian shorts?
He would have been
just sitting there in his gear, yeah.
But that would have been really.
But luckily, he didn't have
he
didn't have a pint in the airport or anything. You know, they all like.
He could have and maybe not said anything.
Yeah, but but there would have been that. No one can go to an airport and have a pint without taking a picture of it and putting it on their Instagram.
yeah.
So he would have got caught.
Saying on Facebook, heading to.
Yeah. There's a picture of the pint and the passport.
But that would have been really annoying from him. Would have been like, oh God, if fly the plane. But I suppose it only would have taken a couple hours.
At least, but he was going with
did he get paid
family.
first?
Oh, I'd say he would have. Yeah. But he didn't have to sit with his family then as well, which is probably nice.
Yeah. Who
screaming
flew the
kids
plane
on a plane
back though?
What? Well, are you all right?
I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Is that rude?
Well, it is, yeah.
That was a sound button we have.
Yeah, the burp button for Stephen. Right. Anyway, so we got a final story that was sent to us by a listener. Ronan sent this in, right? So there is a woman who married a tree in the UK. And she drew inspiration from a Mexican woman who was an activist to stop that thing. So there was 34-year-old Kate Cunningham tied the knot at Rimrose Valley Park in Liverpool. The ceremony was held on a Saturday afternoon and was performed by a local actor, musician and poet called Davy Edge. The woman is a former primary school behavioural support assistant and said that her family and boyfriend are very supportive of the move. She said, my oldest son was initially embarrassed when I told him I was going to do it, but now has decided to come to the ceremony. It means a lot for him to be there. My dad has been very supportive. He's been out in his van all day helping to organise stuff for the big day. I don't know what the hell he's at in his van. But anyway, they were trying to build a motorway through this park and she didn't want it to happen, so she picked one of the trees in the park and married the tree.
Oh, so she actually doesn't want to have any sort of relationship with the tree. No, it was just to save the park.
To save the park, yeah, but she married the tree. But they had a little ceremony and her family and everything sitting around and watched.
And is she married as well, no?
No, she's got a boyfriend, but she's married to a tree now as well.
But I wonder how the boyfriend feels.
That's what I said there. I said he's very supportive of the move.
He is supportive.
Yeah, but I suppose he'd probably say, look, talk to your husband about this.
Yeah.
Is any issues, you know?
There's 3 of them in the relationship
There
now.
is, yeah. They're branching off, right. Yeah. Is that it? Have you any more news?
That was the news!
That was the news, guys.
Rob and Rat's Weird and Wonderful News.
Yeah. All right, so that was the news and we're back.
That was the news. And as I said, today's episode we're focusing on survival stories. And look, there are many different stories of people surviving all sorts of different things, like whether it be a plane crash, shipwreck, and it's been portrayed in Hollywood in movies like Into the Wild, The Edge, and Castaway with Tom Hanks.
That's the one that comes to mind. Yeah.
That is the one. And in today's podcast, as I said, we'll be talking to Douglas Richardson, who was shipwrecked and stranded in a raft for 38 days in the South Pacific Ocean. That's later on.
Probably not the worst place to be.
Yeah, but still,
like South Pacific, isn't that like down there? Is that like Fiji and all that?
It is.
There's nice islands
off the coast of South America.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
Actually, well, I'll just tell you, before the interview starts, I'll tell you that they were going from the Galapagos Islands to the Marrakesh Islands, and
on a ship.
They had a boat called the Lucette.
Oh, you probably get into
Lucette.
Yeah.
It was there. Douglas's father sold the family farm and he bought the kids on basically a trip around the world. Right. It was just an adventure they were going on. He had twin brothers that were on the boat, his mother, and look, we'll get into it later. But it's an interesting story of how they ended up shipwrecked anyway. Yeah. But it's important for people in these situations to have an attitude of survival, which is the art of surviving beyond any event. To survive means to remain alive, to live. Yeah. Survival is taking any given circumstance and accepting it and trying to improve it, while sustaining your life until you can get out of the situation. But like, it's mad.
By any means necessary, doing whatever it has
exactly,
you have to do.
But
like your man drinking his own pee. What's his name?
Yeah,
Bear Grylls.
Bear Grylls.
Yeah.
But like, it's amazing what people have had to do in like cases where people have survived, and like, you know, it's frightening. I suppose, like, I've never been in that situation, but I can only imagine what your mind goes through, and like, you know, it does take. You know, I'd say you come out of situations like that feeling very different person. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, they change you. Yeah.
Are you aware of like the story of Aaron Ralston?
I am not aware of that story.
I'd say you are, but you just don't realise
Don't know
it.
the name, yeah.
Okay, in 2003, Aaron Ralston...
2000 what?
2003.
Yep.
Aaron Ralston was well known for surviving after he was doing a solo descent of the Blue John Canyon in Utah. He had an accident which caused him to get lodged in a boulder. He lodged his right arm to the side of the canyon wall in a boulder. And after 5 days on little food and water, Aaron made the decision to break his arm and cut it off with his pocket knife to escape. Jesus. Yeah, it was covered in that movie, 127
That's
Hours.
the one,
with,
yeah. Danny Boyle did
James
it.
Franco,
Danny Boyle did it, yeah.
But brilliant.
Was it James Franco?
It was
Was
good
it?
film.
Yeah.
It was good film, but God, like, can you imagine like having to make the choice
To cut off your own
cut
arm.
off your own arm?
But I always think about that, Liz. Could you imagine, like, he just cut it off and then, like, you hear sirens and someone go, "Hey, are you all right down there? Jesus Christ!" He throws his arm up at them.
Yeah. He's literally just on the
last one, yeah.
And then he can just hear, "Hello,
Yeah. Is there anybody alive out there?
can anyone hear me?" Oh God, yeah, but like God, but even for him to do,
Because he still had to walk back then, didn't he? After that, like,
he did, and he eventually was found. But like, imagine a pocket knife the size of, you know, the little sawy thing in a
little
pocket
Swiss Army knife, like, yeah.
Like I could, how, like, no anesthesia, no anything, fair
I suppose you have to do it though, don't you? Otherwise, you just die. Like,
Oh, exactly. Like that's it.
life or death.
Another story of shipwreck survivor would be Steve Callahan. Steve wrote a book, and it's a famous survival story. He wrote a book, Adrift, 76 Days Lost at Sea. So in 1982, Steve set sail from the Canary Islands to head for the Caribbean. His ship sank in a storm, leaving him alone in a rubber inflatable raft, half naked, with 3 pounds of food and 8 pints of water. Steve drifted for 76 days, staying alive from food he could catch in the ocean.
Jesus.
Eventually, he reached land rescue in the Bahamas. He had serious mental toughness, and his story shows strength and adaptability. His story is actually still taught in survival classes in the US today, and he is.
How many days was he there?
76 days.
76 days.
Yeah, and his.
Just floating, like,
Just
fishing
floating and
just
trying to catch the thing. But interestingly enough, Steve Callahan wrote a letter to our guest today.
Okay.
Robert Douglason, because he wrote a letter basically thanking Douglas's father for writing the book of their story. Okay. Because their incident happened in the 70s, and they wrote a book. Douglas's father wrote a kind of chronicle story of his survival and how he did it. And Steve basically wrote to him, thanking him, said that he used his dad's book as a guide to help him survive.
Oh, he had read it beforehand?
He had read it beforehand.
He didn't have it with him on the boat?
No, he didn't have it with him, not that I'm aware of, but he used that as a guide to help him survive, which is interesting.
See, if I was on a dinghy for 74 days floating in, like, between the Caribbean and the Canaries, I'd probably just die of sunburn. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think though.
That's what I die of. I'm so fair, like my skin is so fair. I just burned. I probably have loads of food. Burnt so badly, sunburnt.
That'd be so annoying.
Like,
he died of a sunburn.
Yeah, very bad burnout. Lovely tan he had when he arrived at the beach, all washed up.
Oh God.
Yeah.
But okay, so today we're talking to Douglas. Robertson?
Douglas Robertson, yeah. I think that's his name.
So his father decided to sell the farm in England to sail around the world. They set sail on January 1971, and they were shipwrecked in June of 1972. And it's kind of an amazing story what happened to them.
I'm looking forward to it, yeah.
I think it took 15 minutes from the point of what caused their accident for the boat to sink, and they were 38 days adrift at sea
as a family.
Wow,
yeah.
And but to think, yeah. Look, should we go to the interview?
I think we should go to the interview.
Okay, so here's my interview with Douglas.
Nice one.
Your story is pretty amazing, Douglas, about the shipwreck.
Oh.
You were 18 at the time.
I was 18 and a half, yeah.
Yeah, and this happened. 1971. This happened.
No, 1972.
Oh, 1972. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, Douglas, can you tell us a bit about what happened? Like, why were you on the boat in the first place? For people who don't know your story.
Okay, so we had hit upon difficult times economically in the farm. We had a hill farm in the middle of England. You know, it was a fair-sized farm, but we hit on harder times due to bad trading and stuff. And my dad decided to sell the farm, and look, sort of it was an opportunity for a new adventure.
Yeah.
And he decided that he would sail around the world and take his kids around the world on a yacht. And so he sold the farm and bought a yacht with the proceeds.
He bought a yacht.
Yeah.
And it sounds like
people do it, you know.
Sounds like a mad adventure. And your dad was a former mariner. He had worked on ships.
He was a master mariner before. He sailed the ship off a sudden sunk during the war, and he was a professional seafarer. But he'd farmed for 15 years, so he'd sort of forgotten a lot of stuff, you know, and he was in big ships, not little boats, you know.
Yeah, and so at the time when you set sail on your trip around the world, there was you, your dad, your mom.
Yeah, so there was my mum and dad, there was myself and my sister, and my twin brothers, so 6 of us.
6 of you on the yacht. Okay, so you set sail and... You know, you were going grand you were a few years on the...
18 months. We're 18 months before, in the 19th month. So we set off in January 71.
Yeah.
Right? Which is at the beginning of the year. And this happened in June 72.
And just for our...
72, yes.
Okay.
So that's 1.5 years, 18 months, yeah.
So 18 months into the journey, Douglas, just for our listeners, what caused the shipwreck?
Well, we were sailing along, and we had just left the Galapagos Islands, and we were sailing to the Marquesas, which is about 2,000 plus miles across the Pacific. It's quite a long trip, and it was the longest leg of our entire voyage.
Okay.
It was going to be. And we were 2 days out from the Galapagos Islands, and that was about 200 miles, or certainly 200 miles west of Cape Espinosa in the Galapagos Islands. And we got hit by 3 very solid objects. Bang, 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 like that. And it lifted the boat and shook the boat in the water. And it's a big boat, you know. I mean, it was a 45-foot wooden schooner.
God,
heavily built.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what... me and my brother were on watch at the time, and we didn't know what had happened. And I thought we'd gone aground.
Douglas, was this during the day or at night time?
During the day, 10:15, and...
Okay.
In the morning. So... And then I heard these noises behind me, water noises, and I looked down, and there were 3 killer whales. One with its head split open, the blood coming out, and then like a mummy one and a baby one.
One had its head split open, you said?
One of the male, the big male, had its head split open, and was, you know... we just didn't understand. We hadn't put 2 and 2 together yet. That they'd hit us, you know. But it sort of gradually dawned on us that was what had hit. That's where the bangs had come from, you know.
Yeah.
And the Lucette just continued to sail, and it was just like disbelief, really, that this had happened. And I looked down the hatch to my dad and said, "What's happening?" And he said to me, "Where's this water coming in? There's water pouring in the boat." And it was a little bit hard to take in. And then that's when I saw the whales, turned back and saw the whales. And I looked back down the hatch, and he was up to his knees, and it was rapidly rising up to the jaws and up the bedside, you know. And he said to me, "Abandon ship." And I said, "Abandon ship to where, Duke?" I said, "This is not Miami Marina." I said, there's nowhere to go. And he said, "Get the life raft over the side." And I looked at him in complete disbelief, as any petulant teenager would. And I thought, this can't be happening.
Yeah, God, that must have been terrifying.
And I went forward, and I thought, I know what I'll do. This is a nightmare that's happening. I'm going to take the sails down and throw them onto the boom. And by the time I've done that, I'll wake up and the dream will be over. That's what I thought. That was my strategy. So I did go forward and started to take the sails down. And Dougal came up on the deck and said, what the hell are you doing? Get the life raft over the side. And I sprung into action. I got the life raft over, I got the dinghy over, put the oars in the dinghy. And by the time I'd done that, which was about 2.5 minutes, seemed like a lifetime, the Lucette was up to her gunnels in water, and the waves were coming onto the deck. And it was in a sort of stupefied disbelief. We abandoned ship. And, in fact, I got washed over the side. A wave came across and washed me over the side. And I just thought to myself, this is it. This is how I'm going to die. These killer whales are going to eat us, basically.
And the killer whales were still in the water while you thrown the light?
Still in the water. They were as confused as we were. You know what I mean? Clearly, this hadn't gone according to their plan.
Yeah.
And they were swimming around, and I swam for the raft. The raft had started to inflate by then, because it was one of those puller cords.
Yeah. Was the rest of the family kind of just in the water trying to...
We lost contact. We lost contact with each other. So the twins had got into the dinghy with my dad.
Who would have been the youngest?
And they were the youngest kids. With Robin, the student Robin. They'd got in, so those three were in. I think my dad got into the dinghy then as well.
Yeah.
Of course, they got to the raft and tied the dinghy to the raft. Me and my mum were the last two, so my mum got pulled down by the boat as it went down, and she managed to swim away from the rigging and get up onto the surface and then got into the raft. And I had this idea that the raft was leaking because it was leaking CO2, and I thought, I've got to stop this leak from happening. And I met my mum in the water at that moment, and I said to her, Mum, give us something to block this leak with. And she gave me an orange that she'd found in the water, And I sort of thought, well, how the hell am I going to fix this leak with this orange, But I kept hold of the orange, and the leak stopped because it was actually an overflow because they've got enough CO2 to inflate in this cold climate.
Oh, okay.
They've got too much in the tropics, and it vents that off when it. I didn't know about that, but it did stop, and I thought, right, and then I got into the raft as well. And I saw everybody sitting there, and, you sort of think, Jesus, what the hell just happened, But the whole incident there had taken about 15 minutes.
God, I mean, that must have been like, the adrenaline must have been literally pumping.
I kept feeling for my legs in the water, because I heard you don't feel a thing, you just feel and your legs aren't there, and I kept feeling for my legs, waiting for the bites to come, but they never came.
Gosh.
And we wondered if the killer whales ate that whale, I don't know whether they did or not, because they disappeared shortly after that.
Yeah, God, but even being in the water yourselves physically with them must have been just so terrible. With everything that was going on for you, like, how big was the raft you were in? Like, what size?
So that was let me just get this right, a 6-man raft. An 8-man raft. That was an 8-man raft.
Yeah.
And there were 6 of us in it. So we had it was big enough for us, but it started to leak almost straight away because it hadn't been serviced for a couple of years.
Oh my God! What did you do about that?
Well, we just managed to keep it afloat for 17 days, and the raft sank after 17 days. But it served its purpose. It kept us from the sun, where we're in the tropics when it happened. It kept us out of the sun and kept shade over us. And we then got into the dinghy. We tied the dinghy to the raft, and we then got into the dinghy alone and struck out to the land with the dinghy. So we sailed. Let me get this right: 350 miles in the raft dinghy combination, and then we sailed 450 miles in the dinghy.
God, and was the dinghy a part of the boat as well?
It was the dinghy, it was the thing, the boat that we went ashore in, you know what I mean? It was like a fiberglass dinghy. It wasn't really a life raft. It wasn't a life raft. We had the dinghy and the raft to start with.
Okay.
We put the yacht's dinghy over the side, the one that we used to go ashore on, you know. We put the dinghy over the side and we put the raft over the side.
Okay.
So we had two crafts, if you like, and we towed one with the other.
Yeah.
We lived in the raft, which had a canopy over it, and that lasted for 17 days. And then that sank. And we then got into the dinghy, which had no canopy, so we were, and no buoyancy, no inherent buoyancy.
God.
So we knew how to, and there were 6 of us in this bloody dinghy. It was a 3-man dinghy, effectively.
God, there was six of you in a 3-man dinghy.
Yeah, so there was a very cramped situation, you know. We couldn't lie down or anything like that. And
how did you, like, how many days were you in the dinghy?
We were, it's 17, is it 21? Is it 21 days? Yeah.
21 days. How did you sleep? Did you even manage to sleep?
38 days altogether. 38 days altogether, yeah. We didn't sleep. We just dropped to sleep where you sat.
Yeah.
A minute or two later, you'd wake up again. You maybe get 10 minutes. Well,
yeah, you got bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah. You couldn't sleep.
God, it really must have been just like terrifying experience. Did you think you wouldn't make it back to shore at any point?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, we never thought every sunset that came. We thought, well, this is it, you know, because the nights were a bit worse than the days. You know, I mean, in the days you could see,
at least in the day, yeah,
you could see where you would get, you know, you could see things, but at night you couldn't see anything, and waves had come out of nowhere, you know, and we just thought we'll never survive till the morning, but we did, and every morning we were still alive, you know, and we just thought, bloody hell, you know, and then we dared to hope a bit later on, and about day 30 or so, we thought, well, because we sort of knew where we were, we thought, you know, we said, we're 10 days off land, you know, we've been on this thing for 38 days, there's 10 days to go, and then slavery came, you know, in the form of a Japanese fishing boat.
A Japanese fishing boat came?
Yeah, a Japanese fishing boat came and picked us up.
God. And God, that must have, even just seeing that, did you see the boat in the distance, or did it just kind of crash?
We did. Well, we'd had an incident on the 6th day. A big cargo ship had sailed past us, nearly ran us down, in fact, you know.
And it didn't see you?
And it didn't see us. And we fired two parachute flares and 3 hand flares. And it didn't see us.
Oh my God! That must have been a very low point when that took off.
Yeah. I mean, we were devastated, you know.
God.
And because we thought we'd get picked up, you know. And then my dad said, "Look, we can't depend on these guys to save us." He says we have to save ourselves, and the only way we're going to save ourselves is if we save enough food and water. And we sail for America. It's going to take us 70 days to get there, and that's what we have to set our minds on. And we were thinking, fucking hell, 70 days?
Yeah.
70 days? We can't survive 70 days in this.
But God, he was some man to have that mindset to think, you know what, you know,
to put our mindset that we were going to survive and not be rescued.
Yeah.
And he said, if we get rescued, it's an interruption to our survival process.
God.
But survival comes first. And that's what we did. We changed our mindset collectively, and we gathered food in the form of fish and turtles. We dried, and we collected oil. We dyed oil from their fat.
Like, how did you catch the fish? Did you have any nets or?
No. The turtles had just caught my hand and heaved them over the side and cut their throats with a knife that we'd saved from my mum's sewing basket that had gone past. And we drank their blood, and the fish we caught with a hook, which we stabbed them with the hook. We didn't catch them with a hook traditionally.
And did you just ate them raw?
Yeah, we dried some of the meat, and we ate some of the meat raw, and we drank the blood of the turtles.
God, that's amazing. But like,
at I'll tell you what is amazing is how much stuff you know that you don't know you know.
Yeah.
Okay? So when you're sitting in a raft and you've caught a blooming turtle and you've just cut its throat, and you understand within about a short while that there's an artery and a vein, and if you cut the artery, you can drain the clean red blood out and drink that. But if you cut a vein, it takes ages for the blood to get out, and it all coagulates, and you can't drink it. So you learn to cut the artery, not the vein. You know, but you open it up, and you learn that you can refine the fat into oil, and that you can cut the meat off and dry it and keep it and store it like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when we got picked up, we actually had 14 days supply of food and water, and we only had 10 days to go.
God, that is amazing.
But we didn't know that. Of course, could not be sure that was.
So God, like Douglas, it's such an amazing story, and like I'd say, like the feeling. How did you when that Japanese boat? How was their reaction to seeing you, the Japanese fishing boat?
They couldn't believe their eyes. I mean,
Like
we looked a pretty sorry bunch, you know what I mean, in that raft, and we were covered in blood and oil, and you know we were naked and we were wild people, you know, but. They actually asked us if we wanted to come on board, and we thought, well, bloody hell, maybe they think we're doing something like some scientific expedition or something.
Oh my God!
And we said, no, we definitely want to come on board. You know?
No, we're all good here. We're heading for America.
And you know, they gave us our lives back.
God, that is amazing.
We couldn't thank them enough for it, you know.
God, I'd say just the feeling, even like for you as an 18-year-old young lad, like getting on the boat, it just must have been an amazing feeling, like to survive.
Let go, you know.
Yeah.
You can let go of that need to survive, that work, that effort to survive.
Yeah, God.
Suddenly it doesn't matter anymore.
God,
you know.
Like the younger kids as well, like your twin brothers, is it?
Well, you see, we've often talked about what role did they play, you know. They were young, they were 12 years old, but they kept us honest.
Yeah.
And they gave us a reason to get home.
Yeah. Because they were
purpose. We had to get them home.
Yeah.
And they were just young kids. They had a life. I mean, we were only young anyway, you know. But they were just little kids, and that kept us honest about the water and the food, how we shared it out, and how we made sure they had some, and you know what I mean. There's the soft power, if you like, you know what I mean. Whereas everybody else was hard power. They were all working towards getting us home.
God, it really must have brought you very close together as a family, you know.
Well, it did, and it has. But it's a long time ago now, and you know, my mum and dad have died, and but we still have that. We still have it, and we meet up every now and then. Robin, the student, we're still in touch with him, and you know, the twin brothers, and you know, we meet up, and we of course you never forget it. I mean, some of the images and the imagery is as fresh in your mind, because I think that when you remember things under great pressure, that it stays with you forever. You know what I mean?
Like, did you ever have nightmares about it, Douglas? Afterwards, you must have.
For about 20 years.
20 years that you dreamed you were back on the water.
Well, not every night, but you get dreams that were nightmares. You know, that woke you up, and you thought, oh God, I'm in bed. You know, I'm actually in bed. I thought I was in the raft, but I'm in bed. You know?
God.
But after about that far, they just stopped happening. You know.
And you know, when you say the student that was on was there? I'm not familiar with that. Was there a student with you?
Well, it's a hitchhiker. My sister left us in Nassau in the Bahamas. Yeah. And fell in love, you know, and didn't want to come any further.
Okay.
Great adventure. So we took hitchhikers with us from port to port. We took, you know, somebody going to the next port, and there's plenty of people.
Oh, you were just giving someone a lift, like?
And, just giving someone a lift. So this was the third, fourth person we'd given a lift to, you know, and we were giving him a lift to New Zealand. So.
God, and of all the times to get on the boat.
It was the first tripper as well. Never been to sea before in his life.
Oh my God!
But you know, Robin was an accountant. and he was a talker, and he talked a lot, and he loved talking. That's very important on a life raft.
Yeah.
If somebody is willing to talk, because,
to keep you kind of going and keep you listening.
Yeah, it keeps the morale up, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We just used to like to hear him, we didn't care what he talked about, we just liked to hear him talk,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it meant we were alive, because we could hear him talk, you know what I mean?
Was there a movie made about the incident?
There was. There's been 2 movies made. One a big screen movie by Ryan Urich and Ali McGraw, played my dad and my mum. And Ryan Urich played my part, so that was Robert Urich's son. But I think they're both, I don't know if they're still alive now, those actors. I think Ali McGraw might be, but...
The movie was called Surviving the Savage Sea, was it?
Surviving the Savage Sea, yeah. And then National Geographic made a docu-film of it.
Okay.
Right, so that they sort of they interviewed me and my brothers, and Robin, and then they went and then they acted the bit that we talked about. So when I said something about the raft, and then they had a raft and some actors in it in the Zoom.
Okay.
So.
And that was the National Geographic. Do you remember the name? Do you remember the name of that?
It's called Expeditions to the Edge.
Expeditions to the Edge. Okay, that's good.
There were 6. I think there were 6 programs in that series.
Okay.
Hour-long docu-films.
Okay. That might be worth our listeners having a look at. And also, you wrote a book, Douglas, about the experience.
I did. I wrote a book called The Last Voyage of the Lucette.
The Last Voyage of the Lucette. The Lucette being the name of the boat. The Lucette.
Yeah, the name of the boat, yeah. And my dad wrote a book called Survive the Savage Sea, which predates that one, but that's a bit of a dry read. It's a bit of a chronicle. That's a chronicle of what happened.
Okay.
Choreographed, chronicalized by date and time.
Okay.
So,
and then...
But, it did sell... many hundreds of thousands of copies that book did, so Google made a lot of money out of it after we got picked up.
So you made global headlines. Massive story.
Yeah.
And then books are still available now, like on Amazon.
Amazon or what? Yeah, you can get them around, and you can get second-hand ones from Amazon,
That's great. Well, Douglas, look, thanks so much for talking to us, and
it's been a pleasure.
It's absolutely an amazing story to think. To think that you were in a shipwreck, you went from a lifeboat to a raft. I mean, a dinghy, and just...
You don't meet many people who've been shipwrecked for that long, do you?
Exactly.
I've never met anybody else, but I've heard of them. And
but even...
a letter from a shipwreck survivor who had used our book as an aid to survive, and he thanked my dad for writing his book. He wouldn't have survived. Steve Callahan, when he got shipwrecked. But you see, our biggest problem was that we did not believe we could survive. Do you know what I mean? Who does it? We thought we're just marking time till we die. But it just goes to show, never give up.
Yeah, I suppose it is.
Life is hope.
It is an important message, I suppose. I think that point where your mind and your morale drops, you're kind of, you need that. You need to keep it going. The mindset is a massive thing.
Well, what Google said, which is true, sight of a common goal. We had sight of a common goal, which is speaking, everybody's got to have sight of a common goal, but our common goal was to stay alive. Well, we were all very interested in that common goal.
Yeah.
We all had sight of that common goal, and we worked towards getting home and surviving, because our life was the prize. So you can't really get a higher prize than that,
No, and to think that you all survived and came out the other end, it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Douglas,
we may not have made it if we'd had to land on land, so to speak. We may not have made the landfall, because we were very weak when we got picked up. But we didn't. We got picked up. That didn't happen in the end. We got picked up by a ship, and we all survived.
Yeah. Well, Douglas Robertson, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure and an amazing story, and I just think it's brilliant. And thanks very much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, and thanks very much for calling.
Okay, so that was my interview with Douglas. an amazing story.
Jesus, it's a hell of a story.
It's a
hell of a story. Now, I suppose just for listeners, it probably is sometimes hard to hear a little bit of it. But,
it can be hard sometimes.
Go back again if you found it hard. Turn it up and listen to it because it is a bloody good story. Like,
yeah, like it's amazing just to think that, like, I think from when the point that they went from the lifeboat and they were tugging along a dinghy as well. So so they were hit by killer whales.
Yeah, but or they hit killer whales more likely.
More likely. Yeah, and one of them was
the way he says it, like we were hit by them. Like,
get
off the road.
Well, in fairness, they were just using the water as well. But to think, like, you know, when the boat sank and then being over the water, but being in the water with the killer whales.
Yeah.
And then
and obviously he's saying that that one of their heads cracked open, so there's blood everywhere. And like you can imagine, sharks would be on their way.
But like 18 years old, can you imagine
Jesus,
that? Like 1972, that happened. Like it's a while away now, but like it was a massive story. Like, you know, our parents might remember that even just making national headlines. And God,
I liked the bit when he said that they came across the Japanese ship and they were covered.
Do you want to come on?
They were naked. They were covered in blood from like
oil
cutting
from
open turtles and like ripping them apart, taking their innards out, and like just naked this family in a little raft. And they said, "Do you want to come on, or you're at your own thing out there in the boat?" Like.
We'll share as well on the Rob Rat Instagram and Facebook. We'll just put up a picture of the size of the boat and the family.
You got a couple of pictures, do you?
I have pictures of the size of the raft.
Cool,
I'd
like to see that.
So Dougal was Robert's father, who wrote the initial book. Dougal Robertson decided to sell the family farm. Went to that. It's crazy.
Imagine your dad coming home. Come here, guys. I've sold the farm. I've bought a boat.
We're heading off.
Yeah.
As well, I'll just put up from the Galapagos Islands to the other islands.
Just
I'll put up the map of where they were to give you an idea. But yeah, I suppose it's just.
And they picked up a guy as well who was the daughter fell in love in one of the islands and didn't go with them.
The Bahamas, I think, and stayed, and she was happy out there. So they used to give people lifts from port to port. A lot of people would hitch a ride.
But they just said to their daughter as well, "Yeah, you stay there now. You fall in love with a fella on the island. We're going to take someone else on the boat."
Yeah. But what was the student who just got, you know, imagine...
Robin, was that his name?
Robin was the student. But to hitch a lift on that, and it was his first time.
Ever at sea,
God, and then he ends up 38 days stranded. But it's so easy for us to even say just 38 days. But for them living in the moment, hour by hour, in the water, can you imagine? Like, you can't really bring yourself to that kind of...
Oh, it's incredibly, like, mad. Like, for instance, I know it's not a thing, but we did our charity hug, right, the Guinness World Record, and we set the longest world record for the world's longest hug, right?
And it wasn't just the two of us.
No, there's four of us, but we did like 30 hours. And that's 30 hours of staying awake and just like being in close proximity to each other.
Yeah.
And that was like, imagine doing that for 38 times, but you're out at sea and you're like...
Even being cramped in the boat, like, you can't stretch your legs, you can't...
Jeez,
you know, it's tough, so tough.
And you're eating... You got to pick turtles out and then you got to murder them. Murder them.
But fair play to them. They had a load of food. They had a load of food. I must check out the film. I kind of tried to have a look there online for the National Geographic.
You don't know where they got the water from, do you? No.
I think they collected rainwater.
Did they? Okay. Yeah. Jesus. Yeah.
But
that's just survival, isn't it?
But they, even without the water, drinking the blood of the turtles would have kept.
I suppose, yeah. But he said they had enough water to survive another 10 days or something. Something like that. Yeah.
But it's amazing. Look, that kind of concludes this week's podcast.
Well, I was going to say, right, but another thing I always think of survival is, you know, the film Alive. You know, it's the Uruguayan rugby team and they crashed in the Andes.
Yeah. They ate each other. A few of them
they had to eat each other to survive. There was like 45 of them crashed or something. I think 15 of them survived.
It's a good movie, that as well.
It's good. It's a true story. But that's around the same time. I think it's the 70s that happened as well.
Yeah.
I always think of survival. That's true, like, as well, survival. You just kind of like, you're there, you have nothing to eat. You're stuck up in the mountains. No one knows you're there.
You would eat each other.
Yeah, but they waited until people died and then they'd eat the dead bodies.
It'd be kind of handy in a way, the terms that, like, you know, the body wouldn't decompose in that temperature.
That's it. And they were rugby players. They'd be big, bulky fellas as well. There'd be plenty of meat on them.
Did they? I can't remember that film. I saw it a good while ago. Did they cook the meat, or were they able to light fires?
I don't know. Maybe they were cooking it. I think what they did was they were frozen kind of things, and they were going for like butt cheeks and stuff because there's plenty of meat there, you know.
Yeah.
And,
I wonder were they.
I don't know. Did they cook it? I don't know. Did they have a fire? I think they had. No, they didn't have a fire because they used to have. They had like a bit of a reflective thing from the plane, right? And they get the.
The sun maybe during the day.
They put the ice. They put ice on top of that, and that had melted, and they get water from that. Yeah. Because they didn't want to get like frozen. There's a thing going off there. Water in the lungs and stuff. They'd be very careful about that because that was killing them. They're getting pneumonia because you get water in their lung, and then that'd freeze up and you die. Yeah. So a lot of them were just dying. And then some of them took off to go and try and find help or whatever, and they did eventually find it and brought people back.
Yeah, that's...
But so I think that's kind of it. That's our survival episode, is it?
Yeah, I suppose the other thing we mentioned earlier, Into the Wild, that movie. Did you ever see that movie?
Is that Into the Wild? Is that the guy Tato and the horse?
That's
Into the West.
That's Into the West.
Into the Wild. I don't think I've seen the film Into the Wild. No.
It's actually a very good film. It's a true story as well.
Okay. Well, no. When I think of survival films, I suppose I think of like your man Castaway with Wilson, and it's not Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks living on the island. That's like that's kind of the main.
That's a really good film as well.
It actually is good. Yeah.
He makes friends with a.
Is that true? No. I don't know.
No,
it's not. It's just fictional, is it? Yeah.
But
and then obviously I was mentioning before Bear Grylls. He's the main survival guy. And anytime, I don't know if you've ever seen the episode in Ireland where he comes to Ireland and he's kind of showing what it's like to survive. So he gets like left in the middle of nowhere somewhere in Ireland. I don't know, is it Connemara or somewhere? And he's kind of going around just showing like how people can fall into a bog and die. But if you needed to survive, he comes across a dead sheep and he takes out his knife and he cuts the sheep open. And he kind of gets inside the sheep and makes a sleeping bag. And people go into a sheeping bag, and he kind of gets inside of it. Like some of the stuff he doesn't need to be doing, he can just tell you to do it, but gets inside. And then basically, like he says, you could die out here. But basically, at the end of the thing, he kind of walks, and he kind of hops over a fence, and he's just kind of on a road. You know well that somewhere down the road, like in Ireland, you're not too far from a house with some people in it. But it's an interesting watch. And he didn't drink his pee actually in that episode.
Yeah, I don't think he does in every episode.
He should, though.
And there was something on Bear Grylls I saw as well, but there's a type of starfish that produces this, or some type of fish that has, whatever its skin is oily and it actually works as sunblock.
Oh, right.
Which is interesting. But Into the Wild, that movie was based on the story of Christopher McCandless. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but in the early 90s, he'd wealthy parents and he kind of wanted to cut ties with them. I don't know, he wasn't into them, but he went off.
No, I don't want your money.
But he went off to live in the wilderness. But it's kind of
I have seen it. Did he live in a bus?
He did. They found an abandoned bus and lived in it. It's kind of the story takes a sad turn.
Yeah, it's actually not a bad film.
Yeah,
I actually did see it. It's only when you said that.
It's a sad film, because he ends up kind of eating.
He kind of loses his mind a bit, does he?
No, because he's eating berries. He starts eating these berries, and then he has a book of all these different things, and he starts to feel a bit sick, and he realizes that he poisoned himself, and he ended up meeting his death in the bus. On that note,
on that positive note, that's all from us for today.
That's all from this week. Yeah. It's been interesting.
It has.
But it's been cool. I've enjoyed it.
You've enjoyed it. And once again, as we're always, my main objective is to make sure that you enjoy yourself, as long as you have a good time.
I'm actually tired now, Toomey.
Oh, yeah. You have it out kip there for yourself, yeah. Anyway, if you're in bed listening to this, hopefully you've gone off to sleep. Or if you're in your car, hopefully you're still awake and you haven't gone to sleep. So we'll catch you next time.
As we say at the end of every podcast, and sometimes at the start, check us out on Instagram at Rob Rat Podcast, our Facebook, Twitter, and Spotify, and all that stuff. Because look, it's good if you keep an eye on our Instagram and Facebook as well. Like we usually, we might let you know about future interviews we're going to be doing, and maybe a bit of interaction have announcements there
coming up. Yeah.
But as well, we have just for ye, we might have get ye if you've any questions for our future.
And as has happened in the past, if you have any news for our news segment, if you've got any stories, especially if you've got any stuff to do with seagulls, I'd be interested in hearing about that.
But even if you're online and you see, God, that's a mad story, send it on.
Send it our way. We might have a look at it.
We've had a few people now send stories that we've used, and it's been good, and that's great. And we'll talk to you next week.
All right, bye.
You have been listening to the Rob Rat Podcast. Be sure to check out our social media for updates on the next episode. And if you liked what you heard, then let us know by hitting the subscribe button, sending us a message, and telling a friend, because that's how the podcast grows. Thanks for listening.